Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! The thump of bass vibrated through the walls, echoing the pulse of the crowd's excitement. It was the usual end-of-semester ritual, a frenzied celebration to escape the reality of impending adulthood. The apartment buzzed with energy, packed with seniors eager to savor their last moments together. In the heart of this chaos, a card game unfolded in dramatic fashion. Chance, his eyes fixed on the King of Hearts now gracing his hand, inhaled deeply, nervous yet determined. His rival, Dylan, exuded confidence with a mischievous smirk. "Bad break, my friend," Dylan declared, claiming victory with the reveal of his ace. "Time for a toast." He grimaced and reached for the concoction before him, a mixture no sober person would willingly consume. The liquid burned all the way down, bringing tears to his eyes. "That's game," Dylan declared. "Our friend has officially lost 6 straight. You know what that means." The crowd erupted, and Chance's stomach sank. The stakes had been clear from the beginning. Loser faced a dare of the winner's choosing. His eyes drifted across the room to where Melissa stood, chatting with friends, her brown hair falling in loose waves over her shoulders. She wore a simple pink dress that hugged her curves perfectly, paired with black heels that made her legs look endless. 5 years of friendship. 5 years of secretly hoping for more. 5 years of never finding the courage to tell her how he felt. Dylan followed Chance's gaze, and his grin widened. "Perfect," he said, loud enough for nearby partygoers to hear. "I dare you to swap clothes with Melissa for the rest of the night." The room fell silent for a beat, before erupting in cheers and laughter. Chance's face burned crimson as he shook his head. "No way, man. Pick something else." "A dare's a dare," Dylan countered, raising his voice to address the crowd. "Unless you're backing out?" The chorus of chicken calls began almost immediately. Chance looked down at his outfit, dark blue button-up shirt, jeans, and sneakers, then back at Melissa, who had now turned toward the commotion. "What's going on?" she asked, approaching the table. Dylan wasted no time explaining. "Chance lost, and now he has to wear your clothes for the rest of the night." To Chance's surprise, Melissa burst out laughing. "Is that all? I thought it was something serious." She extended her hand to Chance. "Come on, loser, let's get this over with." His heart hammered against his ribcage as she led him down the hallway to an empty bedroom. The door clicked shut behind them, momentarily muffling the party noise. "You don't have to do this," Chance said, rubbing the back of his neck. "It's stupid." Melissa was already slipping off her heels. "Don't be such a baby. It's just clothes, and it's just a dare." She reached behind her back. "Can you unzip me?" His fingers trembled slightly as he pulled the zipper down, revealing the smooth expanse of her back. She stepped away, holding the dress against her chest. "Turn around," she instructed, with a playful roll of her eyes. Chance obeyed, focusing intently on the wall as he heard the rustle of fabric behind him. His mind raced with thoughts of escape, excuses he could make, anything to avoid the humiliation that awaited. "Your turn," Melissa said after a moment. "Shirt off." He reluctantly unbuttoned his shirt, then slipped out of his jeans, keeping his boxers on. When he turned, Melissa stood before him in his clothes, which hung loosely on her smaller frame. She'd rolled up the jeans and tied the shirt at her waist to make it fit better. "Not bad," she said, looking at herself in the dresser mirror. "Now for you." She held out the pink dress. It looked impossibly small in his hands.
"I'll rip it,"
he protested weakly.
"It's stretchy. Trust me, it'll fit."
She picked up the heels from the floor. These might be the bigger challenge. We're close in shoe size, but they might be tight. Chance stood frozen, clutching the dress. "Do you need help?" Melissa asked, her voice softening. "I've never worn a dress before." "Step into it," she instructed. "Then pull it up." Swallowing his pride, Chance did as told. The fabric slid against his legs as he pulled it up, an unexpected sensation that sent a shiver through him. Melissa stepped behind him to zip it closed. The dress hugged his body, tighter than anything he'd ever worn, yet somehow not uncomfortable. "Arms through the sleeves," she guided, helping adjust the material over his shoulders. "There." Chance stared at his reflection. The dress actually fit, stretching across his chest and tapering at his waist before flaring slightly at the hips. He looked ridiculous, he was certain, but Melissa wasn't laughing. "Now the shoes," she said, kneeling to help him step into the heels. Standing in them was precarious at best. Chance wobbled, grabbing Melissa's shoulder for support. "Take small steps," she advised. "Heel to toe!" After a few practice steps around the room, he managed to walk without toppling over. The heels changed his posture, forcing his back straighter, his steps more deliberate. Melissa stepped back, eyes traveling up and down his transformed figure. A small smile played at her lips. "You know what? You actually pull this off better than I expected." "You're just saying that." "No, I mean it." She circled him, adjusting the dress here and there. "Your shoulders fill it out nicely. Different, but not bad different." Chance flushed, unsure how to respond to the unexpected compliment. "Ready to face the music?" she asked, offering her arm like an escort. He took a deep breath.
"As ready as I'll ever be."
The initial reaction was exactly what Chance had feared. Hoots, hollers, and phones raised to capture the moment. He kept his eyes on the floor, concentrating on not tripping in the heels. "Damn, Chance!" Dylan called. "Those legs were wasted in pants!" The laughter that followed was good-natured rather than cruel. Emboldened, Chance performed an exaggerated curtsy that sent the room into hysterics. If he was going to be the center of attention, he might as well own it. As the night wore on, something unexpected happened. The initial shock wore off, and the novelty of Chance in a dress became just another part of the party. He found himself relaxing, growing accustomed to the feel of the fabric against his skin, the way it moved when he walked. At some point, Melissa appeared at his side with a fresh drink. "Having fun?" she asked.
"Surprisingly, yes,"
he admitted.
"Once you get past the embarrassment, it's kind of liberating."
Her eyes held his for a moment longer than usual. "You look good in pink. It brings out the warmth in your skin." The compliment caught him off guard. "Thanks. Your clothes are more comfortable than they look." "The dress actually suits your frame," she said thoughtfully. "You have good shoulders for it." Something in her expression made his heart skip. Was it his imagination, or was she looking at him differently? As the party began to wind down, Chance found himself in the kitchen with Melissa, helping clean up while the remaining guests lounged in the living room. "You've been a good sport," she said, loading cups into a trash bag. "Most guys would have bailed after 20 minutes. Chance shrugged, leaning against the counter. He'd kicked off the heels an hour earlier when they became too painful.
It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be.
Can I tell you something? Melissa lowered her voice, stepping closer. I think you look really good in that dress. Like, really good. The kitchen suddenly felt too warm.
You're drunk,
he said with a nervous laugh. I've had exactly 2 beers all night. She touched the fabric at his shoulder. I'm serious. There's something about seeing you like this. It's attractive. Chance stared at her, searching for any sign she was teasing.
You're attracted to me in a dress? I'm attracted to you, period. She corrected. But seeing you comfortable enough to do this, to not care what anyone thinks, it's sexy. The word hung between them, charged with possibility. I never thought, he began, but words failed him. Melissa took another step closer. Maybe this dare was the best thing that could have happened. Before he could respond, Dylan stumbled into the kitchen. Cleanup crew, my heroes! He glanced between them, sensing the tension. Am I interrupting? Yes, they answered in unison, then laughed. Dylan backed away, hands raised. Don't mind me. Carry on with whatever this is. When they were alone again, Melissa looked up at Chance. We should probably talk more about this, but not here. He nodded, suddenly aware of how surreal the situation was, standing in her pink dress, discussing attraction with the woman he'd secretly wanted for years. My apartment is just down the block, she suggested. We could go there, change back into our own clothes, and talk. I'd like that,
he said honestly. The walk to Melissa's apartment was mercifully short. Few people were out at 2 a.m., and those who were paid little attention to them. Inside her apartment, Melissa switched on the lights and tossed her keys onto the counter. Make yourself comfortable, she said. I'll get you something to change into. Chance carefully sat on the edge of her couch, still conscious of the dress. When Melissa returned, she carried a bundle of clothes. These might fit better than your own right now, she said, handing him a pair of sweatpants and a t-shirt. The bathroom's through there. In the privacy of the bathroom, Chance slipped out of the pink dress with a mixture of relief and strange reluctance. It had been an unexpected experience, one that had awakened something he'd never considered before. The silky material had felt good against his skin in a way his usual cotton shirts never did. He changed into the offered clothes and emerged to find Melissa also changed, now wearing pajama shorts and a tank top. She patted the space beside her on the couch. So, she began when he sat down. That was interesting. Chance laughed nervously. That's one word for it. I meant what I said, you know. Her eyes held his steadily. About finding you attractive. Even in a dress? Especially in a dress, she confirmed. It showed me a side of you I've never seen before. A vulnerability, but also a confidence once you got past the initial embarrassment. Chance considered her words. It was different. Not entirely unpleasant, actually. Different how? He struggled to articulate the feeling.
It was like, I don't know, like discovering a new way to experience myself. The fabric felt nice. The way the dress moved when I walked was interesting. Even the restriction of it had an appeal. Melissa watched him with growing interest. Would you ever want to try it again? Not as a dare, but just because you wanted to? The question hung in the air between them. Would he? The immediate impulse was to say no, to laugh it off as a one-time thing.
but something stopped him.
Maybe,
he admitted quietly. Is that weird? Not to me. She reached for his hand. Actually, I think it's kind of wonderful. Most people never explore beyond what society dictates for them. Her acceptance loosened something in his chest.
I've liked you for a long time,
he confessed suddenly.
Years, actually.
A slow smile spread across her face. I know. You know? Of course I know, she laughed. You're not exactly subtle with those puppy dog eyes whenever we hang out. Heat rushed to his face. Why didn't you ever say anything? Because I wasn't sure if friendship was all you wanted. She squeezed his hand. And I value our friendship too much to risk it on an assumption. And now? Now I think we might have found something new to explore together. She leaned closer. If you want to, that is. Their first kiss was tentative, a question being asked and answered. The second was more certain, a confirmation of mutual desire. When they finally pulled apart, Chance felt dizzy with happiness. Stay the night? Melissa asked. Just to sleep, she clarified. It's late, and I'd like to wake up next to you. That night, curled against Melissa's warmth, Chance's dreams were filled with soft fabric and softer kisses. The following weeks passed in a blur of discovery. Melissa and Chance's relationship transformed from friendship to something deeper, more intimate. And alongside this evolution came another, Chance's growing interest in exploring the feelings the pink dress had awakened. It began subtly. Melissa noticed him admiring a floral blouse in a store window and suggested he try it on. The thrill of entering the changing room with the garment was both terrifying and exhilarating. What do you think? He asked nervously, emerging to find Melissa waiting. Her eyes lit up. It suits you. The cut complements your shoulders. The validation emboldened him. That day, he made his first purchase. The floral blouse paired with black slacks that could pass as either masculine or feminine, depending on how they were styled. At home, alone with Melissa, he tried on the complete outfit. There's something missing, she said, studying him thoughtfully. She disappeared into her bedroom, returning with a makeup bag. May I? Chance nodded, closing his eyes as she applied foundation, a touch of blush, mascara, and, finally, lipstick. When he opened his eyes to look in the mirror, his breath caught. The person staring back was still him, but softer somehow. His features, always on the delicate side for a man, looked harmonious with the subtle makeup. Wow, he whispered. Just enhancing what's already there, Melissa said, her arms wrapping around him from behind. You're beautiful. The words should have felt wrong applied to him, but instead, it felt like recognition of something true, beautiful. He could be beautiful. I need a name, he said suddenly. For when I'm like this, it doesn't feel right to be Chance in these moments. Melissa considered this. Any ideas? I've always liked Judith, he admitted. It was my grandmother's name. Judith, Melissa repeated, testing the sound of it. It fits. Strong but feminine. And so Judith was born, not replacing Chance, but existing alongside him, an expression of aspects that had always been present but never acknowledged. At first, Judith only emerged in the privacy of Melissa's apartment. They would spend evenings in, Chance arriving with a bag containing Judith's clothes, changing after dinner to spend the rest of the night exploring this new side of himself. As the months passed, Judith's wardrobe grew. Floral dresses in summer hues, blouses in silk and cotton, skirts that swished pleasingly when he walked. Melissa helped select pieces that flattered his figure, teaching him about fabrics, cuts, and styles. "You have good legs," she noted one evening as he tried on a knee-length skirt. "Long and lean." Chance, or rather Judith at that moment, smoothed the material over her thighs. "I never thought of my legs as anything special before." "That's because you kept them hidden in jeans." Melissa circled her, adjusting the waistband. "Everything about you is special, whether you're Chance or Judith." The makeup routine also evolved. What began as Melissa's work gradually became a skill Judith herself mastered. She learned to contour, to soften her jawline, to highlight her cheekbones, to make her eyes appear larger and more expressive. There were challenges, of course. The first time Chance shaved his legs, he nicked himself multiple times, cursing at the blood that welled up along his shin. "Everyone does that their first time," Melissa consoled, helping dab away the blood. "You'll get better at it." And he did. Just as he improved at walking in heels, at crafting the perfect winged eyeliner, at pitching his voice slightly higher when he was Judith. More significant than the external changes, however, was the internal transformation. Chance found himself more confident, more at ease in his own skin. The compartmentalization of his personality, Chance for the public world, Judith for private moments with Melissa, provided a freedom he'd never experienced before.
"It's like I've been wearing a mask my whole life without realizing it,"
he explained to Melissa one night as they lay in bed.
"And now I get to take it off sometimes."
She traced patterns on his chest. "Do you ever think about being Judith outside these walls?" The question sparked both longing and fear.
"Sometimes,"
he admitted. "But I'm scared." "Of what people would say?" "Partly, but also—" He struggled to articulate the feeling. "What if it changes how people see Chance? What if they can't separate the two?" Melissa propped herself up on one elbow. "Would that be so terrible? If people saw all of you instead of just parts?" He didn't have an answer for that. The test came unexpectedly, 6 months into their relationship. Melissa's friend Emma was hosting a costume party for Halloween, the perfect opportunity for Judith to make a public debut without the pressure of explaining everything. "You could just say you're dressed as a woman for Halloween," Melissa suggested. "No one would question it." The idea was simultaneously terrifying and tempting. What if someone recognizes me? That's the beauty of Halloween. Everyone's expecting people to look different. She kissed his cheek. "But only if you want to. No pressure." The week before the party, they shopped for the perfect outfit. Not a costume, but a carefully selected ensemble. A burgundy dress with 3/4 sleeves, black tights, and sensible black ankle boots with just enough heel to elongate Judith's legs without making walking difficult. The night of the party, Melissa helped style Judith's hair, using mousse to add volume and texture to her brown locks, creating a feminine frame for her face. The makeup was more dramatic than usual. Smoky eyes, defined brows, and deep red lips that matched the dress. Standing before the mirror, Judith hardly recognized herself. Gone was any trace of Chance. In his place stood a woman, poised and elegant. "Ready?" Melissa asked, already dressed in her own costume as a 1920s flapper. Judith took a deep breath. "As ready as I'll ever be!" The party was in full swing when they arrived. Music pulsed through the rooms of Emma's house, where costumed figures danced, drank, and laughed. Judith clutched Melissa's hand like a lifeline as they navigated through the crowd. "Melissa!" Emma's voice called over the music. She approached, dressed as a vampire, complete with fake blood dripping from her lips. "You look amazing!" Her eyes turned curiously to Judith. "And who's your friend?" The moment of truth. Judith opened her mouth, but no sound emerged. "This is Judith," Melissa filled in smoothly. "She's my date." Emma's eyebrows rose slightly, but her smile remained warm. "I didn't know you were seeing someone new. Welcome, Judith. Any friend of Melissa's is a friend of mine." Relief washed over Judith. She hadn't been recognized. "Thank you for having me," she managed, careful to maintain the higher pitch she'd practiced. As the night progressed, Judith gradually relaxed. She danced with Melissa, accepting compliments on her dress, her makeup, her graceful movements. No one questioned her presence or identity. She was simply Judith, Melissa's date, a woman enjoying a Halloween party. It wasn't until near midnight that the bubble burst. Judith was returning from the bathroom when she nearly collided with Dylan in the hallway. "Excuse me," she murmured, trying to slip past. Dylan's eyes narrowed as he looked at her. "Chance?" he asked incredulously. Ice flooded Judith's veins. "I'm Judith," she corrected, her voice barely audible over the music. Recognition dawned in Dylan's eyes, followed quickly by confusion. "Wait, is this because of that dare? Are you still—" "It's not about the dare," Judith interrupted. "It's about me." She stood straighter, summoning courage from somewhere deep within. "This is who I am. Part of who I am, anyway." Dylan stared for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, to Judith's surprise, he nodded slowly. "Okay. Cool. You look good, by the way. The dress suits you better than Melissa's pink one did." A hesitant smile crossed Judith's face. "Thanks. Does she know? Melissa, I mean." "She knows. She's been—" Judith searched for the right word. "Incredible." Dylan nodded again, processing this information. "Right. Well, enjoy the party, Judith." He offered a small smile before continuing past her down the hallway. The encounter left Judith shaking, but not with fear, with exhilaration. She'd been recognized, questioned, and then accepted. It was more than she had dared hope for. When she found Melissa by the punch bowl, she recounted the interaction in hushed tones. "Are you okay?" Melissa asked, concern etched across her features. "I'm better than okay," Judith replied honestly. "I'm free." The Halloween party marked a turning point. Judith began to emerge more frequently, no longer confined to the walls of Melissa's apartment. Small outings at first, a coffee shop across town, a movie theater in the dark. Then gradually more public appearances, dinner at restaurants, shopping trips to the mall. There were stares sometimes, whispers occasionally, but far less often than feared, and never with the malice Judith had dreaded. Most people were too absorbed in their own lives to pay much attention to others. Chance still existed, still went to classes and job interviews, still met friends for drinks. But Judith was no longer a secret, no longer compartmentalized away from the rest of life. Friends were gradually told, one by one. Reactions varied from surprise to curiosity to immediate acceptance, but none of the outright rejection Chance had feared. By spring, The boundaries between Chance and Judith had begun to blur. Certain aspects of Judith, the confidence, the grace, the expressiveness, began to inform Chance's daily presentation. Meanwhile, Judith incorporated elements of Chance's practicality and humor. "I think they're becoming one person," Melissa observed one evening as they walked hand in hand through the park, Judith in a flowing spring dress the color of cornflowers. "Not that you have multiple personalities, but the division seems less rigid now." Judith considered this, watching a leaf spiral down from a nearby tree. "I think you're right. It's like I needed the separation initially, to explore without judgment, even for myself. But now I'm just me. Sometimes I'm more Judith, sometimes I'm more Chance, but it's all just me." Melissa squeezed her hand. "And I love all of you." The words settled between them, warm and weighty with promise. "I love you too," Judith replied. "I don't know who I'd be without you." "You'd still be you," Melissa said firmly. "I didn't create this part of you. I just helped you find it." As summer approached and graduation loomed, practical considerations entered their discussions. Chance had accepted a job offer in Chicago, while Melissa was considering graduate programs in various cities. "Move in with me," Chance proposed one night over dinner, Judith very much present in the delicate earrings and subtle makeup she wore. "We can find a place together in Chicago." Melissa lowered her fork. "Are you sure? It's a big step." "I've never been more sure of anything." Judith reached across the table. "I want to build a life with you, whatever that looks like, wherever it takes us." Tears glistened in Melissa's eyes. Yes, I want that too." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of preparations. Apartment hunting online, sorting through belongings, deciding what to keep and what to leave behind. Through it all, their relationship deepened, strengthened by the shared purpose of creating a future together. The night before graduation, they sat on the floor of Melissa's half-packed apartment, surrounded by boxes labeled for their new life. Judith wore her favorite dress, a simple navy blue shift with white trim that made her brown hair appear richer, more vibrant. "Do you ever regret it?" Melissa asked suddenly. "The dare that started all this?" Judith laughed, the sound light and genuine. "Regret the best thing that ever happened to me? Never." "Even with all the complications, the explanations, the occasional awkward moments?" "Even with all that." Judith moved closer, resting her head on Melissa's shoulder. "Because it brought me you, really you, not just friendship, but partnership. And it brought me to myself, the whole self I never knew existed." Melissa turned, framing Judith's face with her hands. "I'm so proud of you, of your courage, your authenticity, of the way you've embraced all parts of yourself." "I couldn't have done it without you." "Yes, you could have," Melissa insisted. "Maybe not in the same way or at the same time, but this was always within you. I just had the privilege of watching it bloom." Judith kissed her then, pouring all her gratitude and love into the gesture. When they parted, both were smiling through tears. "Here's to new beginnings," Judith said softly. "To new beginnings," Melissa echoed. "And to loving completely, authentically, without reservation." As they sat amid the boxes of their past, planning for their future, Judith felt a profound sense of rightness. What had begun as a dare, an embarrassment to be endured, had transformed into the most genuine expression of self she'd ever known. The journey ahead would have its challenges. Jobs, possibly marriage, questions from new acquaintances, decisions about how public to be with her dual nature. But she would face them as her complete self, with Melissa by her side. The pink dress that had started it all was carefully packed in one of the boxes, a reminder of the path that had led her here. Not a costume, not a disguise, but a doorway to wholeness she could never have imagined on that fateful night. In the soft light of the apartment, surrounded by the pieces of their shared life, Judith knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be, and, more importantly, who she was meant to be. Not just Chance, not just Judith, but the beautiful, complex person who contained them both.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!